think we are good, David. Without wasting any more time, let's quickly get started. Thank you so much for accepting the invite finally and joining me on Coffee Chat. Let me
Yeah.
quickly give you a brief background about what we do at Coffee Chat. Uh, Obviously, you're a bit way too far for us to send you a mug, but it's all about having conversations over coffee and to see if we can pick various topics that can be of interest to people across the globe and figure out if there are problems that are already being solved or if there are any perspectives and to see if audience and people across the globe can take some input for their problem statements. So that's about Coffee Chat. I've done about, I think, somewhere around 45 chats so far. And all of those have been very interesting in terms of the context. And obviously, my guests who have been, really accommodative enough to enable us to cover all the continents. And so here we are. Thank you so much for joining in, David, and good morning to you. You have just been back from your travels. Looking forward to
Yeah.
have a great conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the invitation. And I just got back from vacation, but I'm actually about to go on a 3-week tour, fact-finding tour in Africa, which I know we'll talk about later. But it's been quite a busy travel season.
Super. So, David, you have been there, you have done that last 20 odd years or more,
Yep.
24, 25 years. I don't know how many, but have been,
I mean,
you have been a veteran. I hate to call anybody a veteran because then you start to feel old, but that's the reality. Why don't you go
yeah,
ahead, talk about your journey, and then
yeah,
I'll straight away hit the deck. And I've got some interesting questions coming your way. So let's get started.
sure. Well, again, thank you for the invitation. Um, what you probably don't know about me is that I spent about 20 years in professional music before I even started my customer experience journey. And I think I took a few things away from that. And one of them was whatever I do in my life, it has to have some deal of creativity. And so, if you fast forward to a point of which my CX journey really began, early in the 2000s, I was part of what we called back then .coms, which was a disruptor experience for the insurance industry, and trying to help make the auto claims process a lot smoother. And we came up with a very unique idea. It was a lot of fun while we were doing it. And so then, if you think, and then I moved to Capital One in the mid 2000s. And in Canada, it was still a new company, and there were only two people in operations. And why that was awesome for me was it gave me an opportunity to learn everything. And I had great leaders at Capital One who allowed me to experiment, to learn, and to, they knew I was one of my former leaders called me the soul of the customer at Capital One. So I think they had a great deal of trust, and I appreciated that because I really did try a lot of new things and came up with some interesting ways of delivering a really humane experience. And so I was with the Capital One for a bunch of years, saw it really evolve into what became 1,000-person organization from two, a combination of both internal captive sites and and the external sites, and really interesting problems to solve in the financial services industry. I then moved to Uber, spent a few years at Uber, really loved that journey with them. It gave me an opportunity to understand not just Canada, but now I'm responsible for some global operations, and definitely the Americas as part of my journey really helped me understand what Latin America required as a customer experience. And then, beyond that part of my role, everybody at Uber had a side hustle, and my side hustle was global safety. And so responsibility for all four mega regions. And so again, I get more input into how customers think. I spent a year at Chime where it was a bit of let me just say, a bit of a chaotic time at Chime, as most startups are when they're first moving, because I think what I learned about that was how to solve through some of the really early challenges in companies. We created some very interesting customer facing processes in my time there that really helped think about the customer at the core and what you really need in their journey for them to be successful, and then move from us telling you what you should do from then to us listening to you and then trying to be more responsive to them. And then it led me to my last gig at DoorDash, which, again, helped me bring all of this together. If you think about DoorDash, has got 5 to 6 million deliveries every day. I mean, 400,000 interactions daily, runs the gamut of customer issues. We had 37 sites or something across the globe. And that was, it was a bit of a patchwork from COVID times. But, again, a combination of internal BPO call centers, very interesting customer problems. And, as a company, DoorDash is a really solid, I think a very solid way of attacking problems. And the CEO, Tony, is just super for really locking in and wanting to understand, and probably one of the most connected CEOs to the customer experience that I've worked with. And so here I am now after all this time, like you said, it is a long time. And I feel like, I've got a lot in my tool belt that I can help and understand and, immediately do this with my brain, and output comes with the solutions right away. So it's a fun place to be.
No, yeah, I'm sure it's been a roller coaster ride for you. But what I also noticed very interestingly in your journey, David, is it's not that for the first time you have chosen to be an entrepreneur. You've already been one, and
Yeah.
more than once, right? So from 2000 till today, what kind of transformation and learnings that you have had being an entrepreneur yourself that enabled or made you a better professional and helped you take the right decisions and maybe learn from the mistakes that you did during these stints? What have been your key takeaways?
So I think number one for me is be good at managing through chaos. I think that, very early on in the .com example that I was talking about, we all just put in 18-hour days. We all knew that we were going to be taking on uncertain situations potentially every day. We were going to be changing things every day. We didn't have process for things when we started, so we had to quickly figure out how to do it. And so you have to be really comfortable with managing through chaos. That actually set me up pretty well, I imagine, for my Uber experience when I first got into a global role, because I think they were still at that point where they were figuring some stuff out, just like Chime and DoorDash, same thing. I think I was okay with that. And if you then go a little further on than that, I think you also have to understand to expect evolution and be okay with that, because how you do things on day one should not be how you do things on day one of year 3 or year 5. If you haven't actually continuously improved there, then you probably have a bigger problem. I think for me, especially, I'm the sort that I have to have a vision to work toward. And I think if you don't proceed with a vision, then you have everybody going off in separate directions. What I really enjoyed about my time at Capital One was every year there'd be a few what they called imperatives that you would then create business plans towards, but they all laddered up into the overall company vision. And you don't need the vision for just you. If you are a leader of a large organization, that your organization also needs to have some kind of vision that they can see themselves in and how that they contribute to it. And it's way better when you have that thought power to say, this is the end goal. And people can say, but this is how this will contribute towards that end goal. And I think that for me is, I would say, three really good things. But since you brought the entrepreneur part into it, we've all got experiences in the past where we may have had regrets. And this one for me is, make sure if you are in an entrepreneurial situation with friends or with whatever, you actually have to document everything. Be very clear. Friendships out the door. It's business. Just get it done. There's nothing, I don't believe in that phrase that, it's not personal, it's business. It's business. And I think that, that .com experience is a great example of where we did not have things as a group of friends adequately documented. And there was some hurt feelings as a result. So document it and then move on.
That's, I think, basics, but most of us kind of, fail at basics. Now when, you have sailed through so many journeys in your professional career so far, all through the Y2K problem to RPA to IPA to AI, all these technologies have always talked about disruption, right? So,
Yeah.
how easy or difficult was it for you to kind of cope up with those? And how to balance the entire human element while you are dealing with technology? Being ruthless or being considerate or hand in hand? What's your take?
Um, I think, look, I don't come with a background of technology. I'll start with that. And so I'm the sort, I've never had a problem asking questions. I remember in a meeting very on in my early days at Capital One, I was a project manager way in the distance. And as a project manager, you're expected to understand the flow and the timeline. But I was 2 weeks into my time at Capital One and thrown onto one of the largest projects the company had ever done. And everybody would walk in the room and they would obviously know everything that they needed to know. I knew nothing. And so I got very comfortable with saying, I'm the stupidest person in the room. You have to explain everything to me. So please do. And so always ask lots of questions. And I think that over time, I'm not going to say, for instance, I'm an expert in AI, but I know enough to be, I would call myself dangerously informed on AI, meaning that I know enough to get a conversation started, but I want to surround myself with people who are really great at solving problems using tech. And I think that, when the RPA journey started and the boom was in RPAs, everybody wanted to do RPAs. Great stuff. Didn't really understand what RPA was. Actually had to Google what the acronym was at the time. But look, I get it and I understood what the value in them. I think what it's been always important for me is it comes back to what are you trying to solve for? Are you really clear on what the data tells you, what the customers are telling you, what makes sense for you to really attack and allows you to then focus your time more on other areas that need your investment. So I feel like I could intelligently participate. Still had feelings of imposter syndrome, but I was okay with that. And then I think that there were also for me along the way, there's a lot of great partners who actually really do have organizations that are built around this. And I think, again, I would be okay. I'm comfortable with leveraging what I can from partners because I shouldn't think that I have every solution myself. It's way too much pressure. I also think if I try to solve every problem, then I also don't get a chance to learn. And I think it's important for me to increase my learnings and my understandings of things along the way. And so I think, as we are now entering into this new world of AI, and by the way, I'm sure you know this more than most, I'm sure AI is not new. It's been around for 50 years. It's just, lately it's the poster child of advancing and excitement. And so I'm asking lots of questions. I'm learning from people around me, and I will let them actually do the work. My part in this, and maybe that's the lesson here, is understand that your part is the soul of the customer, what I want, and here's the problem and why I can't get it. And then leverage the brains around you to say, this is the problem statement I have, and this is the outcome that I want. Can you actually help me get there? What are your ideas on how to get there? Just leverage the best of what's around you at the time. That makes sense?
Oh, absolutely. I think it does. So, in your various roles, right? Uh, where do you think you have kind of leveraged technology to its best, and in various avatars, right? So, any exciting implementation that you've been part of, which you felt that okay, this was life changing in terms of the way you deal with the customers, the way you use technology around any specific use case or implementation that you felt like, oh, it's up close, and I've experienced it firsthand doing magic.
You know what, Kapil? I haven't been blown away by anything yet. I think that's the headline. I think it's too early to be blown away. Look, there's a couple of companies out there I think that have exciting entries in this. I haven't actually been able to use the Klarna bot, for instance, because I don't have an account with that would use that. But I I think everybody's still in this initial understanding phase to try and figure out what is AI and how can it actually how can it contribute to my customer? Because I think, look, I just got back from CCW Vegas. I don't know where you're at CCW Vegas. There's a lot of AI there, for instance. And I think I felt, and this is just my opinion, I don't want to get roasted for this, but it felt like there was a certain amount of peacocking about everybody's awesome abilities, like it's some kind of race or something, and the first one across the finish line looks the best. But I think it again, I go back to the problem statement and what I'm trying to solve, and our companies or whatever the AI producer would be, are they just are they just trying to do AI for the sake of doing AI at times? I also think that another thing that has to happen for me is a realignment of who should be contributing to where AI should be deployed within a support organization, for instance, because that's really where my background is. Because I think the wrong teams are trying to lead the way to create the new toy. I'm in the again, I'm in the customer service space, and I think that in my last gig there, again, it was super exciting. Everybody's like, let's use OpenAI and figure this all out. I was not invited to the table, and there was a whole lot of debate about this at the time, but I was not invited to the table to say, where should we invest resources the most? Where do you actually need the most help, or where would it make the most impact? And I think, I got brought in as soon as they had already decided, for instance, that they were going to try and create an AI experience that provided agents with their first response. And I'm thinking, okay, but I'm not sure exactly what the value is in creating a first response, because what's a typical first response in most customer service organizations? It's, hello, how can I help you, right? We were trying a bit of a different path using empathy, information from the chat bot. I knew I wanted the agents at DoorDash to understand where the customer was in their journey to that date, so they could just simply take it as a handshake and move on to the next valuable point for the customer. I don't want to spend time in trying to explain my story if it's already there. And so when I talked to the AI team that was creating this experience, I said, like, what are you trying to solve for here? And they came back saying, well, we're trying to reduce average handle time. And I'm thinking, but the average handle time for the first response is 6 to 8 seconds. What are you exactly going to do for me? Is this now a cost play? Because I can assure you that it's not going to impact my cost at all. And really what it was trying to do, I think in my head, it was, I want to actually create, I want to have an AI experience that mimics a human interaction as much as possible. Okay, that's something different. And so I think that for me it was a failure, but look, I'm also okay with failure. Let it happen. It's good. We can learn from it and love the experiment. And what that actually was doing was then in the background, the connections and the pipelines that were being made because of this were going to really help when we needed them to do other things. I think it took too many resources and too much time to come up with what was the right the right output for the customer. And I will say, because that was probably not the best investment of time, we really didn't get a whole lot out of that. And I would suggest that we probably lost 8 months worth of time working on that. So still too early for me, I think, to understand.
Because there are two worlds today. One is AI only world, and then there is obviously humanified world, right? So as a customer, you always want a human on the other side, but as a business, you want to reduce your cost of operations. So I think this debate is going to go on for quite some time. But with Gen AI coming in, the noise has only grown from where we were a couple of years ago. So have you experienced Gen AI in any of the use cases, any CRMs, or any interaction with the brands that you possibly are a customer of? Or what do you think about generative AI? Is it gonna still be more like early days, or there are some use cases that you have seen through your messages directly, and there are various self-help journeys that are being created, knowledge management, so on and so forth. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think again, if I go to the CCW Vegas experience, again, I saw a few what seemed to be very promising options. I think the most honest take was from one of the panels where the moderator said that if anybody says that they know everything they need to about AI, then they're not being completely honest. So I think that we're still not yet at that point, and I'll tell you why. There's a few reasons why I think we're not there yet, and this has been a fairly common experience for me across most companies that I've worked with in this space. And I would say there's a lack of really great process out there. If we just think about the customer interaction side, I think there's not a lot of great process. And I think I judge this based on my Capital One time, for instance, because they're a truly wonderful process culture. It's on the minds of everybody. And I think that some of the other companies that I've worked with really just they think about moment in time experiences. They don't think end to end. And so, they generally just then look at how do I just tweak this little process? And they try to figure out in such a way that it looks like it will be 100% applicable. But we all know that you're never going to be able to solve with an automated solution 100% of the situations that come to you. And so I think that what's happening, and this is, if I go one step further on the experience with the first response at DoorDash, initially what happened was they wanted to train the model. So they threw, I don't know, let's just say 20,000 conversations into the model to train it. And what they were doing was they were sending in bad process and bad outcomes and bad scripts that were just really not customer centric. And so what you got then for the initial output from the AI model, the first response model, was exactly the wrong thing that we did not want. And so we had to say, okay, let's just start again. Now I'm going to find 20,000 beautifully crafted conversations and put that into the model. And then we started to get way closer to what it was that we were hoping for from a first response that really looked human at the time. So I think if you continue to tweak bad process, it's not going to translate well. And I think then come back to the question on Gen AI. It's like, where do you want to make the impact the most? Be true to your goals here. Is it cost? Is it experience? If you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, then all you're doing is doing bad things faster. And that's just, that's not really an improvement for your customers. Maybe it might be an improvement for your cost picture, but if you're not actually going to solve the problems, and then what I really would love to what I would really love to see is how might we have some consideration for the employees here. Dr. Natalie Peterhoff, in her book Empathy in Action, has, she really does have this great perspective on the balance between customers who get what they want because agents have great tools and process in front of them. And so as you think about your overall plan here, you should make sure that the people who deliver those experiences have everything that they need and be empathetic towards them. And I haven't seen a whole lot of that just yet. But for me, what it would be, and I'm sure we'll talk about this as well, is tools and processes that will help prepare for them. So I think you have to think about everyone within your ecosystem. And the last thing I think I would say is you got to leave room for flexibility. There's just no way that you're going to be able to solve with Gen AI 100% of your customer problems. And I think this is, again, a challenge that you have to build into whatever generative AI you want to do. Where is the point at which it knows I have to go over and help, I have to hand this off to a human? And a great example of where this goes badly is, I live in Canada. Air Canada's AI experience had designed a whole solution for customer that had no basis in reality. It actually didn't even exist, but it made it up because generative AI was given that permission to go beyond the limit of where I actually think would have made sense. So I think for me, it is just leave some room for customer input. I think you can learn a lot about the edges of your business if you actually listen to what your customer is saying, so that it's not just bad process you have to avoid, it's inflexible process, I think, that will eventually hold AI back.
There's another thing which I have also been thinking around, and we just have a question from Rita. She says that it's also about regulations around the entire ecosystem, and it's about using the technology, and specifically in this case, AI or Gen AI. What I've seen also so far is there have been a lot of litigations and suits around using customers' data or consumers' data without their permission. Uh, what's your take on the regulation? Obviously, it's ever evolving, but do you think that it's okay to take a bet now? Because, for example, you worked at Uber, right? So in India, there's a parallel competitor as well called Ola. And when these people started the entire ride-hailing business in India, for that matter, there was no regulation, right? But it was a gray area, and it all just started. And obviously, from radio taxi to a regulation for ride-hailing cab options available to you. With respect to generative AI, there are various acts that are now being put in place. Even in India, it's a work in progress. What's your take on the regulation aspects when it comes to leveraging technology? And then again, putting a disclaimer when you are having interactions with your customers across various channels.
Yeah, and thanks, Rita, for your question. I look, so for full transparency, I don't know anything about the EU AI Act. I can make assumptions here because the EU is very protective. I was very familiar with GDPR at the time, so I'm sure it's somewhat an extension of that, if I'm guessing correctly. I think for me, look, we didn't have problem with chatbots that are, if I call them if-then driven, because they're not necessarily diving into my background. They're not basing decisions on whatever. They're basing decisions based on a decision tree along the way. So I'm not threatened by that as a customer. I do expect as a customer, and Kapil, maybe you do as well, I do expect to have some virtual experiences. I'm okay with that. I mean, look, if I could fix it myself, I would, and I would still prefer to do that because, the best customer experience is no customer experience, right? But where I think we cross the line is, how much information do you really need to know about me personally? Or can the learning from the AI experience itself be limited to the customer journey and the offshoots of yes, no along that way? Let them learn about that, but don't let them know that, I'm David Wilson of such and such an address. I am this many years old. I have this much money in the bank. Like, I think for me, it goes beyond the need to know, and I'm hoping that is what's actually happening. And I think that the more that if I walked into an experience, for instance, that said, "Hey, listen, I know you have $18 in your bank account. How about you spend it on 3 Starbucks at the moment?" Like, that to me would be just way beyond the pale in terms of intrusiveness. But as long as what you're doing is you are not necessarily incorporating the depth of data, I think I'm okay with a bit of, like you said, with a bit of a moment right now allowing us some flexibility. It's tough to say though, right? Because companies will frequently go way too far, and then bad actors along the way as well. You have to be protected from bad actors. So definitely regulation for bad actors.
No, I think I was having a conversation with somebody, and somebody asked me that what would happen if, and I think this was more like some university doing some research, and I was asked what would happen if Gen AI takes over. Will there be an impact? And I was like, possibly there will be an impact, but there might be a scenario wherein you are getting more work, and the whole reason is, how do you validate the information that you are seeing is correct? Right.
Yeah.
So hallucination, how do you get away from hallucination? How do you ensure that there is no bias? Eventually, it's impossible because there have been recent researches as well. So it obviously poses a lot of threat. Having said that, validating and ensuring that we know what we are getting into. For example, whenever we are providing any information to a business, they are very, very clear that they need to know certain set of details from our side, and we are saying, okay, it's good to have, it's fine, but for sure, somebody crawling my social profile and then deciding what would I do or what I would not do, uh, not going to be acceptable. And I think that's the reason with which a lot of frameworks are being created across the continents. For that matter, as you rightly said, and Rita also mentioned, European Union has been really, really quick to safeguard, and they've been like the way they came out with GDPR. I think the AI Act would also kind of come in really soon, and in terms of finalizing the framework within which the businesses would need to operate. Having said that, it's going to be very, very interesting because at the same time, it makes a lot of things easier for you as a consumer, right? So pretty interesting times ahead. Now, just shifting a bit of dimension from technology to what are you trying to do with Impactify.cx? Been there, done that. Now, another stint. You were, I think, doing pretty good at DoorDash lastly when you were working with them for, I think, various complex programs that you spoke about. What made you jump onto Impactify.cx? What are you trying to do? And just curious, why not something on technology only?
Look, I think if you talk to 10 people who know me and my history, I think what they will always say to you is that there's a degree of authenticity and humanity about how I approach life in general. And I think, I spent 25 plus years in the workforce. I think, I've loved all of the roles that I've done. I think it was time for me to take a pause and pursue a personal passion. And while at DoorDash, I was, I had a leader who was really supportive of my personal passion project of impact sourcing, and I'd always really wanted to do it, and to level set on impact sourcing, where it is for me, where could I take a portion of my overall spend on my BPO network into an area that was disadvantaged from an employment perspective. And so we opened up a site in Johannesburg in partnership with a BPO there called Merchants. And with the great guidance from the Mandela Legacy Foundation. And so we found a place where it was going to be super impactful from a women in leadership perspective, because we were required to have a woman in the leadership role, and 75% of the management team I was hoping to be female. I wanted to make sure that we were paying a living wage versus a minimum wage. I think that was another thing that I was really hoping to do. And then, have some kind of work with a company that had some kind of overall impact on the community from a track record, per se, of helping the community to grow. Because if you help the agent with the right amount of money, they can help their family. If you put a contact center into the townships area in South Africa, you're helping the community. And every contact center job results in 6 ancillary jobs that are related. So now you're really making an impact. And so I love that journey. And I thought, if I had a personal project and that I would want to pursue for a few years, what might it be? Impact sourcing comes up. And so now I'm obsessed with Africa, and I'm going to Africa for 3 weeks, and I'm visiting Rwanda and Ghana, back to South Africa. I'm going to Nigeria as well, just to see other countries, and have a sense of what might jobs be important, and how could I convince more companies, North America and everywhere in the world, to come to Africa and leverage the deep pool of talent that's just right there and ready. And so that's one thing that I want to do. I want to impact the percentage of work that BPOs do within the continent of Africa. And then the other area of super impact that I really want to do is India and the Philippines have 50, 60 years of a head start on Africa. And with that comes tremendous depth and management techniques and understanding how to deal with companies. And so I'm, as part of this, creating a leadership academy so that I can go into some of these sites and help everybody from team leads right up to people who manage and direct accounts, be more able to communicate with the company, problem solve in the way their expectations are, help them understand with techniques on how to solve for, agent poor performance or process performance. And so I'm trying to impact the number of jobs that are in Africa and the management evolution or that journey for them to be who they are. I'm excited about it. I don't even know if it's a real job yet, Kapil, but we'll figure it out along the way because I think that it's important. I think just from a geographical perspective, if you don't have Africa in your global BCP footprint today, your business continuity footprint, you're potentially losing out as well because the undersea cabling connection network in the world is super fragile and always under attack for some reason, whether it's the South China Sea or it's the Straits of Hormuz. There are bad actors out there that are trying to cut off access. And so if you're a company that requires 24/7 availability, not having that, LATAM is great, Asia's great, Africa is the next frontier, and I think a lot of companies are going to get there. So that's what I'm trying to do with Impactify. Thanks for asking that.
Wow, I think this is fascinating. And just to share with you, and I'm sure that Rita would have been very happy hearing this because she leads the Charter of Impact Sourcing at FiveS Group, right? And we have been an early adopter of impact sourcing standard when it all started with GISC. I still remember our first meeting in New York, and we were trying to figure out how do we call ourselves, right? Because we were not a diversity business then. And we are trying to find out how do we exactly call ourselves as, a differentiating business in terms of the value that we are trying to create. And I'm glad that, we were one of the very few early adopters of impact sourcing global standard. It was then run by Rockefeller Foundation, and now IAOP's taken up the charter, and as FiveS Group, amongst, I think, all the consulting businesses, they only have this charter. And in partnership with them, actually, we committed impact jobs to be created with Clinton Global Initiative as well, because President Clinton has also set up a charter on impact jobs to be created. So while the technology is there, I personally feel that technology will go hand in hand with humans. And at the end of the day, it's going to be more like a co-pilot approach. There's a lot to be done on the skilling side in order to elevate the experience, leverage technology so that humans can actually deliver better experience once the entire automation journey is taken care of. When I really want to talk to a human, let the human come and talk to me, but enable that human with technology so that my problem gets solved. So I think that's going to be very interesting journey. And then what you are telling me about various continents, various countries within African region is also that should we need to partner in future, we will for sure come down to Africa and we'll do something together so that we can create more like a scalable impact globally. I think it's just phenomenal. Coming back, as obviously as an individual, you feel that technology has not yet arrived there and still some more leaps to go. There's a question that we have in terms of with your conversations that you see around when you talk to people, when you talk to businesses, what is your take? I'm like, what kind of acceptance is there when it comes to using AI in various business processes, specifically to the CX space? Because right now we are just talking about the CX world right now.
Yeah, look, it's a great question. And I think a shift has to happen within companies to understand that there are a lot of ways to save money and effort from customers in the customer experience side and the customer and the support side. And I think that, my general take is everybody's going to have a finite amount of resources to be able to put into options and developing AI for every part of your company. And I think that at some point, someone's going to have to say, you know what, and I think I just read an article the other day that one company is actually committing like 120, I think it was Vodafone, committing 120 million pounds into the development of AI. And I think that's what actually has to happen. You can't look at this and say, well, I only have $3 million to put towards AI in 2025. I think you have to have an overall vision of what it is that you want to do, get to it, and then overcommit on resources. But you have to think about the entirety of your customer journey to get there. Because, like I said, my previous company example here, I didn't have access to any other AI options except for the first response thing. And I would have loved to have had lots of resources to be able to do certain things for me as a customer service person. I want to have the most prepared agent who delivers with the most effective, empathetic experiences possible. In order to do that, I think you really have to commit and understand that it first starts, like I said, with great process. But then when it gets into the actual interactions themselves, how might you use AI connecting through all of your systems to say, your customer started here, got caught up in your journey here. Now you're going to take it from here. So this is what's happened so far. If I'm an empathetic customer support agent, then the right way to use empathy is, okay, I got you. You're missing some items in your order. Tell me what they are and let me figure this out for you. Rather than, how can I help you? My name is David. Oh, I'm so sorry that this happened to you, and all the sympathetic responses that are out there. And I think that for me, empathy means get me to that point now where you're taking it over and you're doing exactly what I'm asking, because we knew through the data, customers already knew 90% of the time what it was that they wanted the minute that they got to you. So you have to listen to them and be empathetic with them. Don't say stuff like, well, if it were me, I would also be as upset. That's a sympathetic action that really doesn't do anything. There's no call to action from, I'm so sorry this happened to you. But the call to action using empathy is, okay, I understand exactly what's supposed to happen. And now I'm going to try and make that happen for you. And so then it's being prepared with that. But then on the backside of this is, how might I actually use generative AI to iterate on things? Because as an agent, if you're in a large organization, you're an agent and you're presented with a problem, maybe there's 10 solutions and you only know one. And maybe if I had a few more options, you could do this, this, or this, and I don't have to search for it myself. Like, put your knowledge base into some kind of database that can present me with options, because I already know what your options are, because I know where you are in your journey. For me, it's like, the companies that do that will have the shortest interactions. They will drastically cut down, because you will learn from these over time, so that you don't actually even have to, you can solve for it upstream. And I think you'll have a happy workforce, because they will be more than prepared, and that cuts down on attrition and all the training needs that are associated with that. And best of all, an empathetic experience means, I got a customer who's going to come back. And I think that's really what we're in the business for. Forget FCR and NPS and CSAT, all that. The really important metric is, are you going to come back and buy from my company again? And so, I think that as long as you're using it from a visionary perspective to say, I'm going to do this, then I think you can actually you can use AI in the best way possible. One more thing that, like, if there is something that you would say, what's exciting for you? I think, look, QA is another space right now where a lot of companies are participating. A company like Observe.ai, for example. What I actually really, the goal for me in speech and text analytics, what we would call conversational intelligence, is how can I go from a space where I only, do 3 to 5 interactions per agent per week, to knowing every conversation and learning from 100% of my conversations. And I think that's exciting to me, that now there's the pool of which I get, and the data pool that I have now is really great. What I actually, in my head, my little twisted creative head, would be is, don't do QA at the end. Apply QA throughout. If I'm making a mistake along the way, or I'm maybe choosing a wrong option, tell me. Move the QA experience from the backside that isn't customer impacting to the front, and say, okay, I'm going to help you through this journey with all the right information. And if there's a point at which I feel like you're going off track, I'm going to help you find options along the way. So I think that then can lead to automated experiences overall and changes. So for me, those are a few things that I think about with that.
No, I think that's very interesting. In fact, I was actually talking to a few people and then kind of picked this word, which is called platform BPO. The whole idea is to kind of look at how do you really solve for an end-to-end thing. One, obviously, you are talking about a holistic view of 100% QA, giving you a perspective of what's happening with your customers, right? Giving you, and obviously, I think there was a point when I was talking to one of my customers and I told them that, if your quality scores are high, then you should be worried. You should be looking at, lower the quality scores, better you are on top of what you need to improve, right? And I think Auto QA is going to just do that, which is basically enabling technology, to kind of give the right perspective to businesses. And with the platform approach, how can you be proactive and not let your team make a mistake that kind of changes the entire perspective of the customer and makes it looks like a bad experience overall. So I think uh, basically a platform led approach, which is more proactive, which is to use it in the best way, enabling people, as you rightly mentioned, if I'm
Yeah,
going wrong, if I'm kind of looking at some other perspective, and you tell me that, hey, you know what, you are going the wrong way, the better option is here. That's how your customer is going to be more happier and going to come back. And as you rightly mentioned, the metric is not the CSAT. It's basically the customer lifetime value, whether the
yeah,
customer is going to come back to you or not. You are using technology or you're not using technology. It doesn't really matter. If the
that's right.
customer is not going to come back, then you keep using the technology and it's not going to be any good. But
Yeah.
even if the customer is happy with the way you are providing the support, and as you rightly picked, sympathy is not the thing that you need. You need empathy, and empathy also that is more directional and can solve my problem. I think these are few things that will continue to come. Very, very interesting. And I hope Shima Chalam K also asked this question: the future development or improvements. I think it's not AI contact center. It's basically AI enabled, uh, and and I hope that people continue to solve people problems, or rather, for that matter, machine problems. One
Yeah.
quick, I think we are just about time, and maybe I'll take one or two more questions and then we'll try and wrap this up. It's been very, very interesting. Uh, I'm sure you would have, during this journey, would have evaluated a lot of products of late, right? Uh, whether it is CRM platforms, whether it is telephony, whether it is enabling tools, you know, where is your heart in terms of which product you felt that, okay, this comes very close to solving my customer's problem. And I'm like, what exactly do you want even that product to improve to make it really a good product?
Wow. Um, I'm a believer that the the generic platforms, it sounds terrible to say it that way. Let me put it this way. I think a homegrown CRM is the best way to go because you know your customer, you know your process, you know your product better. And to use an external platform is probably, it's going to take way too much customization at the end of the day. It's like, what do you want to do in 5 years versus, I think people think, what am I going to do this year? So play the long game in your CRM. I think so. This maybe sounds a little bit unusual, but um, there is one product that I saw. I don't want to do the name, but it was a company that was taking accent neutralization to a very different space, and it was speech to text and text to speech. And look, I know there's like a lot of great accent neutralizing signal processing software that's starting to arise. Sonus, for example, is a great example of that. I think they're really learning well, and they are like, if you listen to their product a year ago and you listen to it now, it's miles different than it was because of the AI incorporation and the learning. But the speech to text and text to speech was, I'm actually going to take my voice out of it and I'm going to translate it into text. And then from the text, I'm going to speak back to you. So I could actually sound like a woman when I actually deliver the voice in the ear. Now, I think that it does come with some ethical questions around how would an agent feel if you actually take their voice away. That all that stuff can be dealt with, I think. But what was very interesting to me was if you can incorporate AI into this and learning over time, and you're a customer in the USA and you're expecting a USA experience, and look, this is not against Philippines or India or anywhere else. This is if I'm here in the US, then I'm thinking that I would like to have somebody who understands me, knows what I'm like my day to day is like. And part of that, unfortunately, is wrapped up in the quandary of accents. And I think that what the AI is actually doing is it's learning from the speech of the agent and then translating that into text. And then by the time it gets to a customer, then what's happening is you're actually incorporating, no, but this is how a North American might say this, or this is how somebody from Alabama might want to hear this back to in an actual statement, so that I feel like I'm most aligned with that overall. What's great about this is, from a cost perspective, if I can do that with Finnish or Swedish, countries that have don't like they it's tough to staff and source in, say, a place like India or the Philippines for Finnish because you just don't have them. If I can actually use that, then I actually think that you've got a really great opportunity to communicate better, more effectively, more personalized for the individual. And I think for me, that's why I love that product, because it has the potential to be very personalized towards the customer. And if you can deal with the ethical stuff, yes, for sure, then I think that for me it's a brilliant step forward if it actually goes through.
Wow, I think we're gonna talk more about that offline.
Okay.
It's been really very interesting, David, and worth the wait. For the audience, I've been after David for almost about 2 years. I think he was just dashing all the doors over last 2 years,
Yeah.
so couldn't really take out time. But I'm glad Impactify.cx happened and we could actually find some time, because at the end of the day, it's the wisdom which has created over all these years that we wanted to kind of talk about. Before you go, David, one last question for you. And I'm like, while there are going to be more questions, uh, specifically, what is it that you are thinking of the world around you over next 1 year? Technology and human all together. What do you think that your view around technology is going to remain same, or you think that there's a fast-paced innovation which is happening, and you would continue to evaluate various technology elements around and kind of see how you can make it better, or the humanized goal is going to be just there at the center of what you do over the next couple of years?
I think 1 year, if I think 1 year forward from now, my guess is most companies who are doing initial efforts into AI are truly going to understand um, the output. I think we all need to take some time just to understand the output, so then we can figure out then where do we go from here. And I think that I'll give QA as an example here. If I am working now with a conversational intelligence company, I think I don't quite get yet. If I only did manual QA before, I'm not sure that I even know how to run a program effectively that is 100% data based, and how do I actually set up the learning and whatever. I think within an organization of 100 people, for instance, that only ever did manual QA, now that's not going to be their job anymore. Right now, it's going to be you're going to have to learn how to train the model. And I'm going to have to understand, oh, I'm going to have to divide my QA team into, I don't know, these are people who are going to do the design of all the moments and experiences. And these people are going to train the model as it moves on. And these people are going to be able to use the data to help me improve my business. I think that over the next year, it's too soon. I think 3 to 5 years from now, I think that's when the transformation truly has the impact that some people think that is going to happen this year. But I still think that there's a whole lot of learning that companies have to do. people like me who, have been in the world for a bit. I don't have that experience yet. I also need to be taught. And if I don't have the opportunity to learn, then again, we go back to the wrong teams actually doing all the design work. And so I need to be educated and be put on a level playing field so that I can truly contribute to the success of an interaction in a way that I can't do today in the language that you need me to speak. So fast forward a year, I think we're getting to the point where now we can really be effective because we've done enough learning.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I think next time it's going to be
Take way too much.
more like in-person coffee chat, David. For now, I think we are just on time. I really appreciate all the time that you have taken out of your schedule to chat with us. Uh, People have kind of, obviously, the kind of questions that have come in, it looks like everybody is interested to know more about what's the future like. But for sure, it's going to be more of human and
Yeah.
machines coming together as it looks from your perspective. And that's what even I think at this point of time. Uh, let's try and create as much of impact that we can globally. I think next time, not this time, but next time when you're gonna go to Africa, uh, possibly you will have a companion coming in from the other side of the world, and we'll meet right at the center, and we'll go around and would love to see the impact that you are creating in Africa with your vision and drive at Impactify.cx, and see what future holds for us.
Let's do it. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You have a great day ahead. Thank you so much, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good day ahead. Thanks for joining in, and we'll catch you soon next month with another guest. Thanks, Dave. Have a good one.
Thanks, Kapil.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.